Help give kids an extra life by donating today to help sick and injured children. Link in the description and pinned comment below.
You know who else could use a new game right about now? Yeah.
The Metroid series kicks ass. A cult classic franchise among Nintendo's vast library, it was a pioneer in several different ways. One of the first exploration-based platformers, with one of gaming's first notable heroines, this sci-fi saga has inspired many games to come, to the point where it makes up half of the subgenre's nickname. Its games have managed to pull this off with an atmosphere of tension, awesome boss battles, and a proper balance between freedom and guidance. Well, at least the good ones do. An essential part of that balance is the various power-ups and upgrades that Samus packs into her power suit. While power-ups play an important role in many games in a lot of genres, when it comes to the Metroid series, they're part of its very essence. Most of the time, barring some game-breaking technique or some glitch exploitation, these power-ups are the key to your progression through whatever isolated planet or abandoned space station Samus finds herself in. So, to celebrate Metroid Dread being revived from the depths of purgatory, I'm gonna highlight my 10 favorite power-ups and upgrades in the series. They can be 2D or 3D, they can be functional yet awesome or 100% rule of cool. The only restriction is expansions and functions that are always basic abilities are off the table. And before we start, a very special thanks to Alex Roshan for his much appreciated input on my script. He was one of my biggest inspirations in becoming a video maker in the first place, and while he doesn't make big videos like this anymore, he's been building a solid resume as a voice actor. So if you're looking for a VA, well, there's my endorsement right there. With all that said, let's begin our mission and scope out the best of what the Chozo left for us. It's game time! Let's start off with one of the most iconic abilities in the franchise, and interestingly enough, it came about as a result of the technical limitations of the NES. Just like how Mario and Luigi got their hats and mustaches because the hardware gave developers trouble animating hair and mouths, the devs couldn't animate Samus crawling at the time. So instead, they came up with the Morph Ball, which would become a mainstay of the series. The ability, also called the Maru Mari in Japan, compresses Samus into a sphere less than a meter in diameter. It's such a simple idea, but it's the ideal shape to traverse tight spaces, making it pivotal in the exploration of the map, as well as helping you escape from enemies. In some cases, the Morph Ball is also faster than Samus's default running speed, especially in the Prime games, where sometimes a quick escape is the only thing between you and the game over screen. And it has upgrades on its own, including the Bomb Module, the Spring Ball, the Boost Ball, Power Bombs, and more. It even has an upgrade that's exclusive to that one pinball game that I, admittedly, kinda enjoyed. Sometimes I've wondered just how the power works. I mean, does Samus turn into an energy form? Is there a second shell inside the first one that allows Samus to maintain her orientation while morphed? Does she just roll around and get really freaking dizzy? Apparently the Space Pirates wanted to know as well, and attempted to replicate the technology with, thankfully, no success. Well, can't blame them for trying to recreate this implementation of Chozo tech. It's iconic, it's useful, and it's just really fun.
And to think we got this just because they couldn't figure out how to make Metroid crawl. Well, this is awkward. I gotta say something nice about Other M.
If you're a huge Metroid fan, then the likelihood of either having dealt with this game's problems firsthand or having had your ear talked off about said problems by one of many YouTubers is probably greater than 70%. Either way, I'll spare you the discourse because this isn't a 4-hour-long think piece from some neckbeard dude bro who's desperate for clicks.
Not the time!
One thing I will complain about is the whole authorization gimmick. The idea itself was dumb, given Samus is supposed to be a badass bounty hunter instead of a rank-and-file grunt. The implementation was even worse when you consider things like Commander Malkovich withholding the you-know-what when I'm already in the middle of you-know-where because who knows why. I bring this up because one of the best items in the game doesn't require the say-so of Mr. Mal. The impact of the diffusion beam is apparent from the first time you charge it up. It's an enhancement that causes your charge shot to split apart into a bunch of smaller shots upon impact with an enemy or surface, resulting in a wide-range explosion that damages anything nearby. It only works with fully charged shots, but the result creates some serious fireworks. It's instant crowd control, just add "Woo." Seriously, you can clear away a small room full of enemies with just one shot of glowy orb death. Saves a lot of time and looks flashy in the process. The diffusion beam also combines with other beams like the ice beam and wave beams for even more devastating effects. Given the nature of this weapon, it could only really work in a 3D game like Other M, but it does kind of surprise me that the idea for the weapon wasn't conceived during the Prime trilogy at all. Though, to be fair, we did get some other cool weapons out of the bargain. Part of what made the Prime trilogy so special was the way that the shift to a first-person view literally gave you a whole new perspective on Metroid's classic exploration, particularly the in-helmet HUD and the visors that come with it. I do want to give a brief shout-out to one of the default visors, the underrated Scan Visor, which not only gives you important info on enemies, but also insight into the world's lore and just what is going on. In a game with no dialogue, it's a real boon for world building and understanding why you're on this mission in the first place. As far as actual upgrades go, however, let's talk about the X-Ray Visor. Obtained in Prime 1 and 3, this visor feels like an extension of the X-Ray scope from Super Metroid, only the visor is far more useful. Yeah, it reduces what you see to a matter of black and white, and it does have a limited visual range, but it lets you see the invisible, do the impossible, and row, fight the power! In Prime 1, its main purpose was to allow you to see enemies like those annoying Chozo ghosts, as well as the slightly less annoying flicker bats of Phandrana. It could also reveal hidden items and passageways, allowing you to explore even further. Even then, the attention to detail is admirable here. You could see through Samus's arm when she recoils from a hit, as well as through certain surfaces. However, the X-Ray Visor is probably at its best in Prime 3. First off, it inherits a little bit of the functionality of the Thermal Visor from Prime 1 in that it allows you to see the thermal signatures of certain enemies. It's also used to allow you to operate certain devices, particularly on the pirate homeworld. More importantly though, it lets you see through phasite armor, which, in conjunction with the Nova Beam, gives you the inside track to pinpointing the weak points of enemies which use it for armor, eliminating these otherwise tough-as-nails enemies in a single hit. The closest thing we got to this in Prime 2 was the Dark Visor, which is functionally similar, but in a different way, so I guess we can give it credit there.
I can only imagine what kind of creative visor functionality Prime 4 will give us, when they eventually finish it. At least we've got Dread to tide us over.
And speaking of Metroid Dread, the formal reveal of this once purgatory-bound title during an otherwise anemic E3 sparked a renewed interest in previous games in the franchise, particularly Metroid Samus Returns on 3DS. Considering Dread is being developed by the same people who made this remake of Metroid 2, namely Mercury Steam, I guess people new to the franchise want an idea of what they'll be in for. One thing introduced in the remake that was not in the Game Boy original was the concept of Aeon, a planetary energy source that gave Samus some kick-ass new abilities. All 4 Aeon abilities are incredibly useful and a boon to any explorer of SR388. The Scan Pulse helps you flesh out the map and detect breakable blocks, the Lightning Armor makes Samus temporarily impervious to physical damage and extends the range of her melee counters, the Beam Burst just lets you shoot really fast, and then there's one last ability, which is Bayonetta's Witch Time. What? It's actually called the Phase Drift? Okay. Same idea though, right? The Phase Drift is the last of the 4 Aeon abilities that Samus acquires during her Alien Genocide mission, and whoo, is it a doozy! As long as it's active, everything around her is shown moving at half speed. One can interpret it as being that the Phase Drift enhances Samus's speed and reflexes to the point where everything else moves so slow in comparison. But the official description indicates that the ability has power over time itself, and it's not just enemies that are affected by it. Graphical effects, the environment, even the crumbling of fragile blocks is slowed to a crawl. In combat, it's a huge help because some enemies are so fast that they're tough to hit under normal circumstances. With the phase drift in play, however, you have a lot less trouble aiming at them. While its power is limited by your Aeon capacity, smart use of this ability will go a long way towards completing your mission. And with Aeon returning in Dread with new abilities like the Phantom Cloak, we can only wonder what other amazing new abilities are waiting for us.
Trust me, anything will help us with those GLaDOS knockoffs. Here's your reminder that if you're able to get vaccinated and you haven't already, do it. And also that overhunting a species never brings anything good.
Metroid Fusion is widely regarded as one of the best games in the series, and it definitely has one of the creepiest atmospheres of games I've played. A lot of that comes down to the overarching threat of the X-Parasites in general, and the SAX in particular. Hell, their re-emergence on SR-388 after the Metroid genocide is the main reason Samus was in such a weakened state to begin with. Yeah, the Federation didn't exactly think this through, did they? So Samus is now part Metroid, and that comes with their weakness to extreme cold. So the old Ice Beam is out of the question. Shame too, because the Ice Beam was a great weapon, essential for dealing with those pesky Metroids. Good thing she has another form of ammunition they can slap the element onto. 3 cups of Ice Beam, a pound of Missile, mix well, and boom. I mean, literally, boom. Apparently missiles aren't as closely integrated with Samus's body as her beams, because the ice missiles don't hurt her at all. So not only do these puppies give her back the functionality of the Ice Beam in games past, but it packs the destructive power of missiles in the bargain. In fact, in terms of sheer power, they're even a third more powerful than super missiles, and those used to be as powerful as it got for Samus. And it gets even better when you upgrade them to the diffusion missiles later on. Not only do the missiles become even more powerful, but they gain a charge ability that can turn the entire area into Wisconsin in winter. And it doesn't even use additional ammo to do it. The ice missiles also appear in Metroid Prime 3 as a final gift from Rundus after he skewered on his own ice. Aside from freezing enemies solid and rendering them vulnerable to a shattering beam shot, which is the exact opposite of how it usually works, it also creates platforms in molten fuel gel, kind of like the ice arrows in Zelda. Given that the Prime series takes place well before Fusion, this might explain how the Federation knew about them to send the data to Samus. Of course, considering that they weren't planning on giving her the diffusion missiles only further solidifies that the Federation are a bunch of self-serving assholes. Not to mention a bunch of dumbasses if they're intent on continuing to study the X-Parasites. More. When I was talking about the Morph Ball earlier, one of the things I brought up was the assortment of upgrades you could obtain for it. There was one in particular that I didn't mention. Well, there's a reason I waited to bring it up. That's because it's a...
Spectacular, spectacular Spider Ball, spectacular! What, were you expecting the old 1960s theme?
Making its debut in Metroid 2, the Spider Ball stands out above the other Morph Ball upgrades that Samus can acquire. So, what makes it so significant that it takes its own spot apart from the Morph Ball proper? Mainly the fact that it was practically broken in Metroid 2. The main function of the Spider Ball is to allow Samus to stick to walls and ceilings in ball form, allowing her to climb them. And considering that nearly all such surfaces in the game are climbable, with the exception of spikes and such, that meant that virtually any area open at that point was accessible. Needless to say, despite its slow speed, the Spider Ball opened up exploration considerably. Of course, for the remake, they made some of the walls slippery so you couldn't stick. A necessary sacrifice for the sake of game balance, but in exchange, you could combine it with the Power Bomb to perform a super boost. The Spider Ball was also used in the Prime games, used in conjunction with special tracks. These tracks were often used to obtain upgrades, and while some of them were easy enough to obtain on these tracks, others required you to navigate some tricky puzzles, which required the Spider Ball in conjunction with other Morph Ball abilities, like bombs and the Boost Ball. The way the games use these abilities together with the Spider Ball is honestly really clever. Not to mention, there were some bosses that made especially good use of the Spider Ball, particularly in Prime 2. The Power Bomb Guardian wasn't exactly awe-inspiring, But then there's bosses like the Caretaker class drone, which has you boosting across tracks to shatter its core, the second phase of the Emperor Ing battle where you break its cocoon, and especially the final step to finishing off the mechanical monstrosity that is Quadraxis. Well, you know what they say, when you want to completely dismantle a monolithic war machine corrupted by the dark atmosphere of a parallel universe, you gotta do it yourself. No matter how many Morph Ball upgrades or how many kinds of missiles or planetary abilities Samus has at her disposal, the one thing you can always count on is Old Reliable. Well, reliable until the last part of Zero Mission, but you get the idea. It's the beam cannon on the arm of her trusty power suit. And like her missiles and her Morph Ball, her blaster has had plenty of upgrades. Ice Beam, Wave Beam, Light, Dark, Annihilator, Phazon. It's like she's besties with Mega Man or something. But while some may hold the title of Supreme Beam momentarily, it always comes back to the Plasma Beam. Originally introduced in Metroid 2, the Plasma Beam possesses incredible power. In fact, in most Metroid games, it's the most powerful beam you can get. Unlike most other beams that can only hit one enemy at a time, the Plasma Beam can carve through multiple enemies in a single shot. This effect is particularly destructive when combined with other beams, particularly the Wave Beam and its ability to pass through walls, meaning enemies have nowhere to hide. In fact, it's so powerful that in Fusion, the Federation actually withheld it from her so she wouldn't be able to use it against the SAX. Yet she was able to recover from a Core X, proving that sometimes anarchy is good actually. The Prime games gave the beam a fire attribute, making it capable of burning enemies to a crisp, especially ice-based enemies, as well as melting certain ice, at the cost of short range. Its beam combo is a freaking flamethrower. The Prime 3 version of the Plasma Beam was less powerful, but in exchange it became more versatile. It had improved firing speed and range, and, unlike in most games, was able to be stacked with every other beam in the game. A fair trade-off to be sure, but the unique thing about the Plasma Beam in Prime 3 came with the game's focus on the functionality of the Wii Remote. To make use of the Wii's motion controls, the Plasma Beam came with a welding attachment that allowed Samus to repair damaged circuit boards using the pointer in order to restore power to certain doors or activate machines. So I get a weapon that incinerates enemies and can repair machines? Now that's what I call an effective tool. And, as shown in Zero Mission, it's revealed that Samus first received this devastating weapon in an ancient sacred Chozo rite of passage, alongside another iconic upgrade.
Well, when it comes to interstellar threats, sometimes the best solution is to just beam it up and literally kill it with fire.
Sometimes I forget just how many upgrades Samus has had over the years. She's had upgrades for her arm cannon, she's had upgrades for her Morph Ball, upgrades for her missiles, upgrades for her visor, and among the most important are the upgrades for her power suit itself. I mean, it only makes sense that her Chozo-forged armor be ready to adapt to whatever situation Samus finds herself in. The iconic Varia suit helps Samus to stand the heat, when she doesn't have to be authorized to use it. The Dark and Light suits give her the protection she needs from Dark Aether, and when Super Metroid introduced the one thing that would most hinder a powered metal exoframe, they also introduced something to make it moot. Because it would be stupid if they didn't. This, my friends, is the Gravity Suit. First thing I gotta say is that the design really pops out at you, mainly the color scheme. The purple really stands out against the rest of the suit.
Purple is yellow's complementary color, so of course it's gonna stick out. It's only a problem if you're from Minnesota.
The next most important thing is the defensive boost the suit gives you. It improves your defenses from as little as 20% in Prime to as much as 75% in Super Metroid and Other M, which is ideal for taking on the most powerful enemies in the late game. Of course, the most important thing about the Gravity Suit is apparent from its name. While this suit is equipped, the effects of adverse gravity conditions are completely negated. More often than not, this involves water. Just imagine trying to make your way through Meridia in Super Metroid without this suit. Unless you're a seasoned speedrunner, I honestly doubt that's gonna happen. And there will be times when you need to swim through magma to reach your destination. The Gravity Suit is your best friend in times like this. After all, magma counts as liquid. Superheated molten liquid that would roast you to ashes, but liquid nonetheless. And hey, in Prime, it grants you clearer visibility in water, further showing the game's attention to detail. Oddly, in Other M, the gravity feature doesn't change Samus's general appearance, but it does show that the suit isn't just for amphibious purposes. With this power in effect, the decompression of space is no longer an issue. How else do you think Samus was able to deal with the kaiju-sized Phantoon without getting sucked out into space? Jedi Force powers?
To be fair, given Other M's bad writing, introducing Star Wars-esque bullcrap would only be an improvement. Okay, maybe not stuff like Rise of Skywalker, but you get the idea, right? God, this brings back memories.
Okay, be honest. How many of you were waiting for this one? Any fan of Metroid knows about this legendary power-up. I mean, it's the literal icon of the franchise. Many upgrades Samus can acquire enhance her suit or her weapons, but when she picks up the screw attack, she does more than carry a weapon. She is a weapon. And overall, she will kill. The origins of this incredible power have been a mystery. Some believe it was created by the Chozo, which would explain its compatibility with the power suit. The Prime games, however, call this into question, as it's described as unknown technology, instead of being Chozo or Luminoth in origin. But that's just window dressing compared to what this baby can do. The screw attack energizes Samus's spin jump with incredible power, turning a majority of enemies into mere particles at the slightest touch. Yeah, we're talking about one of the most deadly jumps in history, something capable of clearing out a room of enemies with little effort. This is especially true when you combine it with the space jump boots in most 2D Metroid games. Let me put it to you like this. When you combine an item that makes your spin jump a force of devastation with an item that allows you to maintain said jump indefinitely, not a damn thing short of bosses is ever touching you without forfeiting its existence. That's how insane this power-up is. Annoying bat enemies too pesky for you to blast? Fire up the screw attack and blow right through them. Hoppers getting in your way? Screw attack says not today! Space pirates in your face? Good thing you have the screw attack to put them in their place. It acted slightly differently in Prime 2 and 3. It combined the regular screw attack with the space jump and the wall jump technique. Thing is, while Samus was still invincible, there were some slight nerfs to the ability. Samus could only jump 5 times and could only slightly change her trajectory, so it was mainly used simply for traversing long gaps where no grapple points were around. And while it could destroy weaker enemies in a single hit, additional hits were needed to take out more powerful foes. While the nerfs were probably necessary given the 3D nature of the Prime games, it does knock off just enough points to keep it from the top. But that doesn't change how useful and iconic it is. If it's powerful enough to be a part of Samus's moveset in Smash Bros., there can be no doubt that it's a symbol of the series. Powerful enough to blast enemies to dust, and incredible to look at, any list of the best power-ups in the series would simply be incomplete without it. And before we finish our mission, here are some honorable mentions. The light suit from Echoes, the grapple beam, the thermal visor from Prime, the PED from Corruption, the shock coil from Hunters, and the classic Ice Beam. One thing I've learned over the years is that the universe does not lack a sense of irony. Throughout this list, I've talked about abilities that transcend human comprehension, tactical technology that gives you a strategic edge in battle, unique powers that expand the field of exploration exponentially, and weapons that make Samus a one-woman arsenal. So what's the most ironic thing that could possibly top all of them?
The ability to run really, really fast.
On paper, the speed booster sounds as simple and mundane as it gets. You get momentum going, originally by holding a button in Super Metroid, and once you hit the threshold, Samus goes supersonic. While that sounds comparatively basic to many other power-ups in the series, in execution, what you get is likened to the blessing of the speed gods themselves. The raw kinetic energy of the speed booster not only allows for ridiculous running speed, which is sometimes the only way to get over certain bridges before they crumble, but also incredible destructive power. Most enemies you run into are reduced to so much splatter on your visor, and certain blocks are crushed to dust by the sheer force of impact. Not only that, but it charges your spin jump not unlike the screw attack, on top of boosting your jump distance, which only comes natural with such a raise in speed. That alone would get the speed booster to at least top 5. But what makes it accelerate straight to the top is the special technique that comes with it, the Shine Spark. How does it work? Well, as demonstrated by the Dakura in one of the many secret rooms in Super Metroid, you can store a charge while crouching in the middle of a boosted run. Then, by performing a normal jump, you take off like a rocket in whatever direction you're holding. Definitely useful and required to get some items in every game the speed booster appears in. But how is this technique number 1 worthy? Simple. It is absolutely busted. Ask anyone who speedruns Metroid, and they'll usually tell you that mastering the Shine Spark is essential in getting amazing times. This is especially true if your run involves sequence breaking, and there are so many ways to abuse Shine Sparking. One way is by Shine Sparking horizontally into a ramp, resulting in going back into a boosted run, allowing you to charge another Shine Spark in another direction. Or in Zero Mission, you can charge a Shine Spark, then go into Morph Ball mode and perform a Ball Spark using the Spring Ball which is built into the high jump boots in this game. Particularly good Shine Sparkers can even find a hidden room in Fusion, which is only accessible through expert use of all the Speed Booster's functions. Simply put, the Speed Booster breaks everything. The sound barrier, blocks, enemies, sequence, records, hell, it even breaks the 4th wall. The only thing it doesn't break is my heart.
Of course, with Metroid Dread no longer being Metroid Dead, I'm looking forward to some new power-ups for Samus to get her hands on. Truth is, I'm just as excited for Dread as I am for Prime 4. And with the release being so close, I can only wonder how long they've been working on it. Funny how a number in the right place can get people so excited. I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed.
So, something confuses me about the new Space Jam movie. The original Space Jam had Michael Jordan help the Looney Tunes win their freedom from a group of jacked up aliens, right? The new one doesn't actually take place in space at all. It takes place in the digital world. Couldn't they have given it a more fitting name? Like maybe Cyber Jam or Data Jam? Hell, even Traffic Jam would be a more fitting name. Next time, QG at the arcade, NBA Jam. It's game time! Hey everyone, QG here. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Feel free to check out my Twitter and my Twitch streams, and consider supporting me through Patreon, and donating to my Extra Life campaign to support Children's Wisconsin. Thanks for watching.